Yes. Shall I say something or shall I just continue? Okay. Now that we know a little bit about the history behind 2030 agenda, we can dig deeper in the meaning of sustainable development. Our Common Future by Brundtland in 1987 is noted to be the most frequently cited publication to define the beginning of the current understanding of sustainable development. What happened here? In this definition, among others, the necessity for international cooperation for sustainable development was stressed. According to De Vries in 2012 and Robinson in 2004, this definition and understanding of sustainable development required economic development to take place as part of the sustainable development. However, there are limitations to this definition. For instance, Rob van Tulder, in his 2018 book, Business and the Sustainable Development Goals, a framework for effective corporate involvement, states, even the most quoted definition of sustainable development can be classified as a more or less defensive elaboration of sustainability. It defines sustainable development as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. A more proactive elaboration would read, meeting the needs of present generations while enhancing or improving the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The latter elaboration is less about limitations and more about opportunities. In 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the definition of sustainability has expanded. This definition seeks to build on the Millennium Development Goals and complete what they did not achieve. They are integrated and indivisible and balance the three dimensions of sustainable development, which are the economic, social, and environmental. The interlinkages and integrated nature of the Sustainable Development Goals are of crucial importance in ensuring that the purpose of the new agenda is realized. The change from Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, to SDGs in 2015 is illustrative of the general direction of the change in how sustainability has been defined and shows several issues. 1. Greater involvement of the private sector, firms as well as CSOs in the development agenda. 2. Bigger emphasis on partnerships to fulfill fill remaining institutional voids. 3. The more modest role of governments with limited budgets. And 4. The universal nature of the agenda. 4. The universal nature of the agenda, which implies that sustainable development challenges exist all around the world and not only in the so-called developing countries. The 17 goals and 169 targets 232 indicators of SDGs have set focus on people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. 5 Ps. The inclusion of partnership as one of the focus areas indicates the collective nature of and requirement for achieving SDGs. As UN report from 2015 states, we are determined to mobilize the means required to implement this agenda through a revitalized global partnership for sustainable development based on a spirit of strengthened global solidarity focused in particular on the needs of the poorest and most vulnerable, and with the participation of all countries, all stakeholders, and all people. As I mentioned in the previous episode, based on the United Nations Economic and Social Council report in May 2019, there have been progress on certain SDGs and their targets. Nevertheless, the slow progress on many SDGs is considerable, and the most vulnerable people are still suffering. The report states that the global response is not ambitious enough to guarantee the achievement of the SDGs by 2030, and therefore a series of cross-cutting areas where political leadership and urgent, scalable, multi-stakeholder action cross-cutting areas where political leadership and urgent and scalable I cannot say this, why not? And therefore, a series of cross-cutting actions are needed to dramatically accelerate progress. In the next episode, I will elaborate on why the SDGs progress has been slow. There has been extensive research on the role of private sector in taking the lead and the responsibility for achieving SDGs, whereas the available literature and research on the role of civil society and civil society organizations and SDGs mainly refer to the role of CSOs as implementers of SDGs and its interventions. In the words of Tetet Nera Larun, co-chair and co-chair of CSO Partnership for Development Effectiveness, multi-stakeholder partnerships are expected to proliferate with the aim of supporting the attainment of the overall 2030 agenda. But how will this work if we often take it for granted, ignoring many of the tenets that make it true multi-stakeholder? Most days, we only take it as a given. In her 2019 article, Leaving No One Behind, The Influence of Civil Society Participation on Sustainable Development Goals, Carole Anne Senit argues that spaces for civil society participation within intergovernmental negotiations on sustainability have multiplied since the 1992 Earth Summit. Civil society is more likely to influence within informal and exclusive participatory spaces. And when those spaces are provided early in the negotiation processes at international and national level. This reveals a democracy influence paradox, as the actors with the capacities to engage repeatedly and informally with negotiators are seldom those that are most representative of global civil society. This indicates the challenge CSOs are facing for influencing the SDGs in design and achievement, and this challenge is not limited to the global scope of SDGs. At the European level, similar criticism has surfaced. Kruger in 2008 stated that organized civil society was associated with expectations of increasing input or output legitimacy. Participation of civil society organizations is officially seen as a means of bridging the gap between the EU and its citizens, as materialized in the EU discourse of participatory democracy. However, the outcome of her research shows that the inclusion of organized civil society contributes little to the democratic legitimacy of the EU and is instrumental to institutional power games of the European Commission and European Parliament. Worse, the Commission, through its consultation practices, may be contributing to an aggravation of the democratic deficit. The 2019 Nairobi Statement at International Conference on Population and Development, titled Accelerating the Promise, only makes two references to the role of civil society organizations in achieving 2030 agenda. The first one is about strengthening their capacity to continue their work, which is a passive positioning of CSOs. And the second one is in combination with partnership necessity. The second one is in combination with partnership necessity. It says, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development requires new, innovative, and strategic partnerships, including with and between youth, civil society organizations, local communities, the private sector, and through South-South and triangular cooperation among countries. All these points out that our current approach towards achieving SDGs is not matching the desired and required approach, which requires multilateral partnerships. Hold on, this needs to be changed. All these point out that our current approach towards achieving SDGs is not matching the desired and required approach, which needs multilateral partnerships. So, we talked about the history of SDGs and other major global agreements that were signed in 2015. We also talked about the definition of sustainable development and how between MDGs and SDGs there is a shift in this definition. there is a shift in this definition, which is a good move and change. We also talked about how the role of civil society organizations and civil society in general is not taken serious enough for achieving SDGs, and why is that problematic. We talked about all of this and have not yet got into the conversation about measurement, impact, or scaling. And as a little warning, there is a lot more to talk about before we get there. Having an impact, I believe, has become a buzzword in recent years without carrying much value. And I'm afraid the same is happening to the term scaling. But let's end on a more positive note. It is possible to have an impact and also to measure it. And if you can measure it, then we can scale it. Okay. Yeah, this one is done. Let me check something, okay? Yeah, yeah. Yes. Yeah. Okay, I'm ready to record the other one as well. Cold, yeah. Well, it's okay. I mean, I don't want to redo all the time because my voice may change. Oh no, I'm sorry. Okay, next time I bring all of them. Okay. I was hoping for, hopefully. Let's see how far we get, okay? Okay. Yeah, because we have till afternoon. I thought we might be able to do it, but we'll see. Okay. This is your native analyst, huh? Number 2. Like a mule, Iran has the features of a few political systems which assembles its constitution, yet it does not fully adhere to all the components of these systems. Like a mule, I believe, the political system of Iran cannot reproduce itself and will not give rise to a new generation. It is a stronger, more stubborn, and more resistant than its parents. Its constituents cannot overthrow this mule system. Well, Welcome to the second episode of Your Native Analyst. Thank you for showing up and tuning in. In this episode, I talk about the Islamic Republic of Iran's political system and how complicated and yet straightforward it is. In this episode, I talk about the Islamic Republics of... Oh my God, okay. Maybe I should stop now and we edit the other one because I feel I'm not in a good state of mind. Okay, I stop.